Hello and welcome to Between the Spires. Today we're at O'Hanlon House to talk about the issue of homelessness and speak to Homelessness Oxfordshire, their staff and their clients about what is arguably the most important matter that we have to solve in Oxford, city and county. I spoke to Susan, one of the staff, and Simon, a former client, about their experiences here at O'Hanlon House.
My name is Susan Lambert and I have worked here for nearly 16 years. I started here when it was the really old shelter, and the clients slept in dormitories. They're only allowed sort of access at night. We used to have people sort of sleeping all over the place, so it's more about keeping people alive.
I've been here for 15 months. I was homeless, and this was my home. Job-wise, I've been a chef for 35 years. I only worked in 3 kitchens. I've only lived in a couple of houses. That was due to me cocking it up myself. But within here, you just get the support of everybody, from the top to the bottom.
It's so easy to become homeless nowadays, and we see it quite a lot, where people have lost a job and a month later end up here with no other issues. It's just that they couldn't afford to keep their accommodation.
Well, the staff are absolutely brilliant. They fully supported everything I wanted to do. Activity-wise, they put on activities, different kinds of activities, whether it be art, cooking, music, computer, anything like that. Everything here is for you. You're fed 3 times a day.
Recently we've had projects in Oxford shut down because of the funding, and now we've just had a new pot of money coming in because the Oxford City have recognised that the homeless in Oxford it's growing.
And there's so many people still on the streets that need this sort of place, need more buildings like this, not being shut down, or they need to help with people, and hopefully they will, because they really, really do help me. I've moved on. I moved out last week to a very nice place in Botley, a nice quiet flat, and I couldn't be happier. And I'm still getting the support of the staff for 3 months, and I still come in here for my lunch 3 times a week because I use those doctors next door. So, yeah, it's really good.
After speaking with Simon and Susan, I met with Claire, the Chief Executive of Homeless Oxfordshire, to find out more about their work and the issues they're facing. Claire, thank you so much for talking to us today. Tell me a bit more about you, what's your job, how did you come into it?
I'm the Chief Exec here at Homeless Oxfordshire. I've been here for around about 2.5 years now. I used to be the Chief Exec of a charity that supported vulnerable young people, and we often work with people who were at risk of becoming homeless. And I developed a real interest in actually how do you help people break cycles that mean that they could prevent themselves from becoming homeless. And when I saw this job advertised, I thought it was a real opportunity. It's a fantastic charity. We're the largest provider of accommodation to single homeless people in Oxfordshire. We're in the top 7% nationally in terms of the range of services that we provide. And it's a really good charity to work for.
And if you don't mind me saying, you don't sound as if you're from Oxfordshire.
I'm not,
So
no.
when you first came into this job then, or maybe you'd obviously visited before, what did you make of the problems going on? Because homelessness in Oxford obviously is now, I'd say, acknowledged as a problem.
Yeah.
But what did you see as the extent of it when, as a sort of as a citizen to begin with?
Well, I think that it's important to recognise that there's a distinction in relation to people who are rough sleeping and homelessness as a broader issue. So homelessness can mean people who are vulnerably housed and at risk of losing their tenancy. It can be people who are sofa surfing, so they might be staying at friends and not necessarily on the street. So I think it's important to understand that homelessness is a broad descriptor. I think if you look at actually what we're seeing now in terms of rough sleeping in Oxford City, we know the numbers have increased by 125% since 2016. So it's much, much more visible. And I think because of that, there's a real interest, particularly amongst the community, for people to want to understand the issues around why people become homeless and actually get involved and make a difference. And it's really important to us as a charity that we have that buy-in. You know, we want to be the local charity of choice for people in our community.
And then looking at, you know, speaking to a few of the clients previously, like Simon I spoke to earlier, and Sue as well, talking about, you know, when, you know, they didn't know much about the building or the charity before they came here and whatever. But Sue said when she first started, I think 16 years ago, that it was just about keeping people alive during the winter. And obviously you have great facilities here which do a bit more now, different resources. But I was quite struck by that in terms of how drastic the situation was there, and it seemed as if there wasn't much attention to homelessness until recently, really, in Oxford. I don't know if you agree with that.
Well, I think that, you know, looking back historically of how this organisation has operated, we were a night shelter. You know, people who were homeless queued up and they got a bed for the night and they left during the day and they came back again the following evening. The profile has really changed, I think, over the last, since I came into post, you know, the profile of homelessness is much wider in relation to the interest in those reasons why people are becoming homeless, but also understanding that we do provide a really, really vital service. And when you look at mortality rates for single homeless men, I think it's around about 47, which is the average lifespan of a homeless man. So, you know, we don't say it glibly that, you know, it's a life-saving service, because if you have got a place of safety to come in off the streets and you've got the opportunity to have a decent meal, you know, we serve 75,000 meals a year, you know, the opportunity to have a safe, warm space, a change of clothing, some hot food, they're the very fundamentals that we take into consideration that keep us healthy. And without them, you're really at risk.
As somebody who's probably one of the leading figures in this sector then, in Oxfordshire and the wider region, you talk about how the profile has increased, but there's still, you know, the 125% increase. Why is that? Is that because, you know, the support you're getting, you know, charities like such as yourself aren't getting enough support as well to sort of do more? Or also there's, you know, local politicians, or what is the situation as you see it?
Well, it's multifaceted, I think. I think fundamentally the picture in Oxford reflects a national picture, that, you know, in relation to austerity and cutbacks, a range of services that are available have decreased over the last few years, particularly for people who have very complex or high needs, which means that their problems become more acute. And ultimately has to mean that more people end up, you know, living on the streets. So we need to look at it from a system point of view. We need to look at why things like welfare reform are having the impact that they're having. If you look at the average rent for a property in Oxford City, if you were to be moving into a private landlord's house and you were a single person and you wanted to claim housing benefit, the amount you could get, I think, for a shade room is around about, I think it's about £83 a week. When you actually look at the rents are anywhere between £600, £700, maybe £800 a month. So, you know, you don't have to be a genius to work out the maths that accommodation is unaffordable in the first place. And we have people here who have had businesses. Their business has gone, belly up, and they've turned to alcohol. That's affected their relationship with their wife. They've then left the home, they've lost their children, and they've ended up living on the street. So I think it's important to not think of homelessness as being something that's removed from us, because actually, you know, we are all potentially at risk of becoming homeless if we've not got that support or we've not got that access to opportunity to be able to have accommodation.
No, that's really interesting in terms of, you know, what you mentioned in terms of the relating to what I've already talked about in terms of the stigma behind it, because people normally would think, you know, the very, you know, sort of crude stereotype of homeless people has been there for decades generally, and they're not just people that have old businesses and stuff like that. So with that, just in terms of that, with your work, do you can you try and raise awareness to people in terms of actually saying that you are open to everybody, like Simon was saying, he didn't know about this at all, and there was you know, the bad press, wasn't really sure about it. What can you do to sort of tell people that, you know, if there is a difficulty, you go through such a terrible time, that this is a place for you and you'll feel safe here, and so on?
I think that one of the first observations I had when I came into post was that, you know, this organisation has worked really, really hard doing the work, but wasn't spending the time telling people the outcomes and the great work that it was doing. So one of the strategies that we've put in place is to increase our capacity in relation to fundraising, and also in relation to publicising the work that we do. So I think we've got a responsibility to make sure that the people in our local community understand that we're here, and understand the range of services that we provide, because we're not just a hostel. You know, we have 155 beds over about 25 properties in the community. We're working with people who are trying to get themselves ready to go into residential detox. We're working with people who are coming out of residential detox and need a place to stay before they enter back into community. You know, we're working with people who are at risk or have lost their job and need a little bit of support to get back on their feet. So it's about understanding what we do and how significant we are locally, and we've got a job to do, which is why it's great to talk to you today, because you know, you're part of helping us get that message out there, and that level of understanding. But homelessness is a really, really complicated issue to talk about, you know, and there's no one fix. And I think it can be very hard if you think of homelessness as being the people that you see sleeping rough on the street, and you feel so removed from them that it's difficult sometimes to go, actually, I don't know how to begin a dialogue, you know, with that person, and I want to do something, but I feel uncomfortable, and I hope that people will get in touch. You know, we've got a huge amount of volunteers that help staff our kitchen. It's, you know, like I said earlier, I really want to push that people see us as being the charity that they'd like to support in their community.
So there we are then. We've learnt more about the work of Homelessness Oxfordshire just behind me here at O'Hanlon House. We've spoken to staff and clients about their incredible work. And I think what it does show is that homelessness is a huge issue in Oxford, if not the biggest issue. But there are people trying to solve the problem.